We love shooting, hunting, and educating. So if you want to learn about long-range shooting, you're in the right place. This is the Long Range Addicts Podcast. Shooter ready, stand by.
Yeah, everybody. Cole, sorry, I've taken some time away from this, and I haven't done any live sessions lately. And I'm like, well, shit, let's do one. Even though it's middle of the day, I don't care. There's still somebody that might be bored and want to listen to the crap we're spewing and get going. But anyway, to start it all off, of course, I want to thank our awesome sponsors. We've got some new sponsors that are going to be coming on again. We're growing like crazy. And it's because of you guys listening. It's because of the feedback. It's because of everything that's growing with the podcast. So I really appreciate, everybody tuning in, listening, checking it out. Do me a favor. If you go listen to it on one of the podcast networks, give it a like. It really goes a long way with us being able to understand what people are liking, give us some feedback, and it helps us rank better when you like it anyway. So if you like the podcast and you're listening to it on whatever podcast, please give it a like and give it feedback. Anyway, first off, let's thank one of our big sponsors, Primary Arms. I just finally got one of the long range scopes in. I've got it put on one of my rifles. I'm going to test it out. Had a lot of people send me messages like, hey, I want to know how good this primary arm scope is, and I want feedback on it. So I'm going to do a full review on it. We're going to try it out. We're seeing how it tracks, see how everything works with it. So I'm excited. So thanks, Primary Arms, for that. Stay tuned, and we'll try and put it out on the Long Range Tactics Facebook page and stuff. Anyway, let's get rolling. How you doing, John?
I'm doing pretty good. Can't complain too much.
You've been traveling all over the friggin' place, training and stuff. What the hell you been up to?
Yeah, I did a lot of traveling for work. Then done some training on my own, and then just been shooting a lot of matches. So I've still been trying to average, with the exception of a couple of months, the last few months, I've been trying to average about 4 to 5 matches a month. So
what are you doing for work? Like, what did you go do?
I was doing private instruction for a contracting company for security contracting. So
yeah. You went to Jordan. You've been all over the place.
Yeah, I was doing a lot of work down in Georgia, and then I did go to Jordan for a couple of weeks.
Yeah, that'd be fun. Hell, get paid to go to Jordan and screw around and have a good time and ride camels backwards and all that good shit.
Yeah, it wasn't too bad. I didn't complain.
Good. Yeah, we've been freaking busy here, man. The firearms industry, it slowed down a little bit, but I don't see it going, I don't see it going any slower anytime soon. That's the big thing. And we're still trying to keep up. I've heard quite a few companies say that they're actually going to start pushing out orders further and further because now they're having hard times getting parts, and there's just so many freaking variables in it. Some of the action companies are really struggling, and I finally have got some orders that I ordered back in it was back in February, March. They're finally starting to come through, and I'm like, shit, we never used to have to wait this long. Now everybody's, you've got to stockpile a bunch of stuff, which costs a ton of money, but it is what it is. You win some, you lose some, right?
Yeah, I think it was just a huge combination of all the stimulus checks that people then turned around and used to buy guns. And then the shipping delays we had at the beginning of COVID. And now we're running into more supply delays because all the ships are sitting at port, not able to get through customs. So I know that's causing a huge backlog, both in components for rifles and for ammunition.
Yeah, and then steel prices are through the roof. I mean, a lot of people are like, it's double from what it was last year. Like, I've talked to a couple of steel companies, manufacturers that do like AR-500 and steel like that, and they're like, it's almost double. We can't afford to keep selling it like it is. It is what it is, but you grow with it. Hey, Alaska Andy, appreciate you coming on and joining us. If you're out there listening and you want to have us talk to you, let us know where you're at. Let us know where you're from. Comment. It makes it a lot better of a podcast if people are out there commenting, and we'll put it up, and then it'll actually go on the podcast itself when it gets submitted. But join us. Let us know where you're from. Give us your name. Again, we appreciate you following us. Today, we want to really talk about calibers. We've seen it a lot in the long range tactics group where somebody will ask, hey, I want to compete, and I want to compete in PRS, NRL, that kind of stuff. And I don't know what caliber to buy. And then we see a lot of freaking stupid um, responses. You know, the number one is
Yeah.
because a lot of the people don't know, right? It's one of those things that you're just, if they haven't shot, you can tell really fast if they haven't competed in a match because they're, oh yeah, you're going to go shoot 300 Win Mag in a PRS match. No, you're not. I mean, I've done it. Don't get me wrong.
So have I.
Because I haven't had anything else, right? It was what I had. But I want to go into that. If it's something that you have, then that's one thing. If it's something that you're trying to go out and build, that's a completely different thing. Don't you agree?
Oh yeah, absolutely. I'm a huge proponent of kind of bring whatever you have lying around, whether it's for 22 or PRS or if you're trying to get into F class or like any type of competition, just show up with something and that'll get you in the door. You're not going to win the match. Don't expect to, but it gets you in the door, gets you networking with people that then can help you determine where to go to next. And that's going to be influenced by people that you know shoot that sport. If you go to a PRS match, you're getting direct input from PRS shooters. If you just put a comment up on a random long range Facebook page, insert whatever page you want, you have to kind of keep that or take that advice with a grain of salt. Do they actually shoot the application that you are asking for? And if you're asking that question, tell them what your application is. I know Cole's seen it. I've seen it a whole bunch. People put up questions. Oh, I've got a $1,500 budget. And like, that's their whole question. It's more of a statement, right? They don't tell us what they need it for. They don't tell us how long they're planning to shoot in terms of distance. They don't tell us what they're trying to use the rifle for outside of maybe that application if they're trying to do one rifle for multiple things. And so that's all information that changes the caliber that might be selected or the scope or whatever it is.
Yeah, I mean, I got it. I had a guy the other day that I deleted his post out of the group because all he did was he goes, I want a scope and I want $1,500, and then insert all of these freaking comments that had nothing to do with what he was trying to accomplish. But he did it to himself because he didn't say, is it first focal plane? Is it second focal plane? What is the intended use? What is, there's so many variables that you've got to ask when you're doing this. And it's kind of something that we want to bring up as we're talking on the podcast. Like, it doesn't matter what group, it doesn't matter if it's a long range tactics group, it doesn't matter if it's the beginners, shooting beginners. You guys need to step back for a minute while you're typing on your phone of what question to ask and really go deep. Like, what questions do you really want to know? And that's kind of why I wanted to get into this ballistic part of what cartridge or what caliber to choose, because those are two different things. A cartridge and a caliber. A cartridge is within a caliber series, right? And then there's a caliber. So 276, 0.243 is 6 millimeter, 0.270 is 270. That's all caliber specific. And then you get into cartridges, right? So I kind of want everybody to go through this. I did a podcast the other day with the Armed Citizen podcast. Go listen to it. We kind of talked about getting into shooting, understanding what to do. We talked about, I preach it all the time, go RO match. Go do something before you go freaking buy it. Go spend the freaking time and, learn about it before you go buy it off of some guy on the freaking Facebook or the interwebs. You have no clue who the hell he is or what he's trying to say. Hey, Chris, thanks for joining. It's I want to break this down. It's hard-earned money. People spend hard-earned money on this stuff. And I really want to help you guys all be more proficient, more educated, and understanding what you're going to get. So it's just one of those things that these are some options that I want you guys to kind of give us back feedback on the podcast so that we can cover this. If it's truly a question that you want to know and you see it all over the place, let us know. I mean, we're more than happy to cover it, but let's kind of dig deeper into the caliber cartridge, all that kind of stuff. So in your opinion, John, now what caliber, what cartridge did you start with when you started competing?
I started with 308. Part of it was because that's what we had, and that's what I was most familiar with. So I'd been shooting it for a couple of years for work, and so I just kind of stuck with that, and that allowed me to stay in the tactical class for PRS, right when PRS was first starting to kind of become a mainstream thing. And then shortly after that, I switched to rimfire primarily. And then I've shot matches here or there with some other calibers. I shot 6.5 with the open class Tub 2000 for a match here, or it wasn't in Virginia, it was in Maryland, just across the border. And then I've shot 300 Win Mag at a match because that's what we had. They were supposed to have targets out to 1200, and we decided 308 wasn't going to cut it. And then that stage got cut halfway through the match. So then I was trying to shoot a 300 Win Mag off of a whiskey barrel at 35 yards. And yeah, it did not go well at all.
Mm-hmm. Yeah, been there, done that. I did that. Hey, just a quick heads up. If you're on Facebook and you're commenting, make sure you go click on the link on the Facebook to allow StreamYard to let us know who the hell you are, because I don't know who you are. It just gives me a weird random freaking name, and I don't know who it is. So make sure if you're on the Facebook and you're commenting, go click that and allow it to show what your name is. But when I started shooting, I started with a 300 Win Mag. We originally built these at Barnes when I worked for Remington and Barnes. We built these for Vortex Extreme because that was the cool thing, at that time. And so we built these big freaking giant 300 Win Mags, and we had no idea, honestly, what we were doing. And I went to a couple matches. The freaking match directors were pissed when I started destroying their freaking, their still. And that's the thing. I was shooting a 220. But the ammo that I was shooting was the U.S. Army's MSR contract ammo. Mm-hmm. So my 220s were going at 3,100 feet per second out of my 300 mag because we overloaded them. That's what they wanted to try, and that's when they went through the whole I'm going to blow freaking everything up, and what it is. Shut up, Jose. Freaking Marines. But that's where we started, and I want you all to understand. All of us started somewhere. It might have not been the right place to start because we learned our lesson. But that's what I want you all to understand is we've gone through a progression, and we want to help you miss all the steps that we screwed up on, right? After that, I went to 260. The 6.5 Creed was kind of coming out right then. This was back in, what was it, 2013, 2014? It was back then. And I got into the Lapua, the 260 brass. The stuff was awesome. Shooting 140s. I mean, it was an awesome round at the time because we weren't really looking into the 6mm category like we are today. But the 260 was great. Everything was there. But the biggest issue with it was recoil, and staying on target. And a lot of people are still to this day, hey, 6.5 Creedmoor is the best thing to compete with. There's a reason why a lot of people aren't competing with a 6.5 Creed. It is great. If you have it, don't get me wrong. Go freaking compete with that cartridge all day long because you can be competitive with it. Are you going to be the best you can be with that cartridge? Probably not. But it's a great starting point for what you're trying to do. What was your second? So you went 308 and then...
and then I kind of played around with a couple of different things. And right now I've settled on 223. I just shot my first match with the rifle after it finally got finished this last weekend at Quantico. It was just a local club PRS match. I took first place for tactical and fourth overall.
Okay. So why did you go to 223 though? Out of everything, why did you choose 223?
So for me, 223 is fairly prevalent for ammo. I've got a fairly good stockpile of match grade 77s that I can practice with and shoot tactical class with. And then if I want to shoot open and be a little bit more competitive on the overall standings, I can hot load some 80.5s or 85.5s and still be getting phenomenal ballistics that is fairly close to being in line with some of your 6 Creedmoors and stuff that other people are running without having to have a second rifle. So I can practice with my 77s and then load up something else for a match, and I don't have to worry about changing anything out. And then it's also still got the same benefit as the 6 Creedmoors and all those with drastically reduced recoil. I can watch most of my projectile trace during my shot process. I don't have to do anything crazy for it. It's easy to get stuff that shoots. I've shot 4 different types of factory match ammo out of it, and all of it shoots sub-minute. I haven't. Yeah, it's been super easy. It's way easier to do.
What chamber did you go with?
It's a 223 Wild, pretty sure.
Yeah, and when you're building that cartridge, make sure you understand what chamber you're going with because the Wild is in between 223 and 5.56, so it's a shorter neck than 5.56. but it's more accurate because you can load into the lands a little bit better with
Mhm.
what you're doing than 5.56. So understand that if you're going to do 2.23. Now I've got probably 3 2.23s that I shoot a lot. I've got 4 or 5 actually, but I don't compete with them. I train with them a lot, and I set them up like I set up my my comp rifles, just because
Yep.
of like what you said. They are very easy to use. Now out west here, we have a ton of freaking really long shots. It's a different variable on the west coast than it is the east coast. You got a lot different terrain. You've got more wind, and that's another question that you're going to want to ask if you're asking your buddies, where are you shooting at? And that's one of those things that you need to understand. Is because it's variable on where you're shooting at. If you're going to shoot Florida, it's got different wind, it's got different variables, and maybe the 223 is a better version. And that's why I think going to the match
Mhm.
itself and watching what everybody else is using is great. Now, going from that, it's great. It's a great option for anybody to go 223. Like you said, there's a lot of great options. I personally shoot sixes. I've got 6XC, 6 Creed, 6 GT, and I've got one other one. I can't remember. But each one of those you need to understand give different things. Now I don't know. It's probably going to rub some people wrong, but when you get a cartridge and you try to push it into something that it's not, why didn't you just build the other cartridge that you're trying to go to? I see people all the time with 6GT. Hey, I'm getting 30 over 3,000 feet per second. I'm like, that cartridge wasn't designed for that.
Yeah.
Number one, the pressures weren't designed for that. It's great that you're doing that, but if you want to push a cartridge if you want to push a bullet that fast, why didn't you go to something else? Why didn't you go to the 6 Creed? Why didn't you go to the 6XC? Something that you can load mid so that you've got more room to play with it if you want to hit that ballistically. Now, if you talk to Tate or any of those guys that load the Dashers or the BRs, they actually load it a little slower. They're like,
Yep.
we're pushing it as hard. The BC's still good. We understand what velocity does. We practice with it enough, so we know exactly what we're trying to accomplish with the round. But again, that's something else that you need to ask and you need to know. What am I missing?
I think you just brought up a really good point is they practice with it enough. I feel like a lot of people are pushing the higher and higher velocities because they're trying to cut their wind calls down because they don't want to miss because of a missed wind call, when it would be a lot cheaper and it would be a lot easier for them to learn how to call wind than it is for them to just try to never have to call it. And I feel like that's a lot of it with a lot of these cartridges. You get brand new shooters to the sport that maybe are brand new to reloading are getting pushed into cartridges where you need to be an experienced reloader. 6GT is not an amateur's cartridge. You need to be experienced in shooting. You need to be experienced in reloading to have rounds that are consistent. It's a phenomenal cartridge if you know what you're doing. I feel like a lot of people think that the equipment makes or breaks their placing. I know I made a joke of it to Jose the other day, but you get a lot of mid-pack shooters. I can switch them from a 308 to a 6GT to a 6BR, and their placing will go up or down one place. It doesn't matter. That the cartridge isn't what is limiting their ability. It's that they don't practice and they don't have the proper training, so they don't know what to practice, or they don't know how to call wind. And yes, some of those cartridges cut wind a little bit better, a lot better. If you compare like 308 to 6BR or something like that, it cuts wind a lot better, but you still have wind calls. So if they're trying to get something where they can just hold center at 1,000, it doesn't matter what they load or how fast they load it. It's never going to happen. And now they're just missing a $4 shot instead of a $1 shot.
Yeah, and I'll give you all a tip right now. I've had a lot of people not realize or not think about when they're building their cartridge is, are you going to go with friends? Like, are you going to go shoot matches with a bunch of your buddies? If so, why don't you all try and stick in the same cartridge area, same everything? Because then you can help each other with wind. You can help each other with a lot of different things that, if one of you is trying to shoot a 308 and the other one's trying to shoot a 6BR and the other one's trying to shoot a 223, it's going to be all over the freaking place. But if you can get somewhat close and you can help each other and you can have fun with it, it does make it more fun when you're shooting good. Everybody says that.
Yep.
Me going from 260 to to the sixes, the last two matches that I've done, it's top 20s. And it helped me. It did. And my biggest problem is I don't practice worth a crap. Everybody's like, well, all you do is shoot. And I'm like, no, I don't. I just look like I shoot a lot. I got a lot of guns. They just collect rust. But no, I need to practice. And that's the thing. There's a lot of guys out there that don't practice that are still freaking phenomenal, but there's that in every sport. But
Yep.
I think that's another thing you need to look at when you're picking a cartridge is, can you afford to reload for that cartridge? And can you find components? I mean, right now, the biggest thing is, can you find components for anything? Can you find powder? Can you find primers? Can you find brass? That's the biggest thing. And I know everybody's starting to cut back on shooting because of those factors and
Yeah.
trying to do that. But what Justin posted, the biggest reason Creedmoor took off is because of factory support and consistent match ammo on top of cartridge performance. The new cartridges are now splitting hairs. Yeah, I agree 100%.
Oh yeah.
There was before that, you had the 30-06s, you had a lot of this stuff that just, it was okay. You could shoot it, but it didn't have the ability. Hornady did a phenomenal job. It seems like the last few cartridges that Hornady's put out has done an awesome job. The 6.5 PRC, for instance. I mean,
Yep.
I just built mine and I don't even have to touch it. I shoot their factory ammo and it's phenomenal. Excuse me. And it's just one of those things that you've got to understand that the 6.5 PRC had its place and it has its place. Whether it be in a real hunter, whether it be, hunting, it's a great cartridge. But if you're going to compete, you're shooting constantly off a barricade, you're shooting, using different things, you're not going to be as consistent with it as you would be a less recoiling round unless you practice with it enough and you understand it enough to where you can understand your misses, you can understand how to mitigate the recoil as it's coming back. A lot of people learn that as they practice, is how to handle the recoil, stay on target, watch the miss, watch the hit. Hey, even if I hit it, right edge, I'm going to adjust, a 10th left because I don't want to send the next one and go even more right. It's just little things that you need to adjust and do. But again, going to a match and saying, hey, can I get behind your rifle and, look through stuff? That's definitely one of those things. But what if you were to build one cartridge, John, what would it be? Like if you were to build one caliber, is this going to be the best thing for competing? Is it the 223 in your mind?
For what I wanted to accomplish, yes. And that's why I kind of built this gun from the ground up. I didn't have a PRS rifle for pretty much an entire year, just waiting for components to come in for me to finish this rifle build. And I'm really happy with it. I think the 223 is one of the most underrated cartridges because it's so versatile. I can go down to super light projectiles, or I can go up to super heavy projectiles. Even in other long range sports, Palma is another big one where it's limited to 308 or 223. And there have been a couple world class Palma shooters have been hurting a lot of feelings by switching back to 223, and they're just getting a lot more consistent results. And for those that don't know, with Palma, there is speed and weight limits. So 308 is limited to a 155 grain, and I think 223 is limited to 80.5. If I remember correctly, I might be wrong on that one. And then they can't run them super fast, and it's limited for a reason so that they have to call wind regardless of the cartridge. But yeah, I just think it's super underrated, especially if it's loaded properly. There's some people pushing some fast 80s loads that are supersonic out to 1,400 yards, which makes it completely competitive for open class PRS.
Yeah, and that's why I built that 22 Creed. It's actually sitting back here behind me, but I built that to get those really fast 88s. But you also need to understand, if you're going to go fast and you're going to go heavy, you got to understand twist rates too, because twist rates have a huge factor in doing what you do. Did you go with an 8 twist?
1 and 7.7 or 7.5. No, 1 and 7.5 is what I went with.
Is that a benchmark?
Yeah, it was a benchmark barrel.
Yeah. And a lot of people are like, well, you're going to spin the jacket off of that. But I don't think you're going to get one of those heavy bullets going fast enough to spin a jacket off of it. I mean, one of the lighter ones, maybe. Yeah, if you push it fast enough. But
yeah,
you've got to figure that in, what you're going to shoot with it. If you're going to shoot a 50 grainer with it, you might destroy it when it goes flying out of there. But an 88 would be perfectly fine because you're not going to push it fast enough to overspin it. And the 23
going fast.
But I mean, they're like, I can't remember some of the loads. They were in the 32 to 3,300 feet per second with like an 80 grain version. And I know a few people that are competing with the 22 Creed and the 223 and different things. And that's another thing you can look at as a 223 shooter in like the PRS division. You're competing in the tactical. So you've got what, 308, 223. So it kind of puts you in a different place to compete. Are you going to beat the guys with the freaking hot rod sixes? Depends on how good a shooter you are, I guess. But I'd like to see some people prove it, and I think a lot of it depends on who's shooting the cartridge. And if you
a lot of it depends on that. I mean, I beat out a 6 GT and a couple other hot rods at this last match, but it was a local club match. But the other thing too with it is I didn't want to have to reload a whole bunch. I'm not a super in-depth reloader. I'm finally getting my own home setup, or my own setup at home for reloading, so I don't have to use a buddy's setup. And my big thing was I wanted something that had good factory ammo that I didn't have to worry about. Now, granted, I have a fair amount of Black Hills 77s, but now I can go shoot all my local matches, and I don't have to spend 2, 3, 4 hours loading the night before like the typical PRS shooter. I can just grab my shit and go. I just signed up for the Guardian long range match that's in Virginia next weekend on a whim, like yesterday. And I need 250 rounds, I think, for the 2 days. I'm not reloading any of it. I'm shooting 77, so it saves me like 5 hours right there.
Yeah, if you can find it, I mean, go for it. That's the big thing, is if you can rock and roll.
That's all components right now.
Yeah, somebody said 223 long throat are great for monthly matches. I agree. I mean, if it's something that you know that you're just going to go out and compete with and have fun, why not go shoot a 223? Hell, maybe I should do it. I've shot a couple 308s thinking I was going to have fun. I got my ass kicked, but that was because I was used to shooting hot rods, and I'm like, okay, that one's like 2 mils, so I'm shooting 308, so I need to be like 13 mils. It was moving at the speed of smell, it was just going slow as hell. But you've got to understand that. So again, that comes back to who you're going to be shooting with. What are you shooting? Are you shooting out west? The 308, it's a great cartridge, but it's probably not going to be at the top of the list if you're going to do it. Same as 6.5 Creed, in my opinion. Now, somebody else can say, hey, their opinion, 6.5 Creed's the best. Great. It's your opinion. Somebody said the 223 running 80 grain ELDMs at 2950. I mean, the BC on that is probably pretty damn close to
phenomenal.
To a 6 bullet, and you're probably, that's faster than I'm pushing my GT. My GT, I'm 28. I don't know, 2860, something like that, if I remember correctly. I don't know. It's been a minute since I've shot it, but
we switched on the Marine Corps team to 223 for 1,000-yard prone competition. We set a Marine Corps record with 223s, going a little bit slower than that with an 80 grain projectile, because it was ballistically superior to 308 in every way, wind, elevation, all of it, and it still left us in service rifle category because it was a 223.
Yeah, and see that all depends on what you're trying to accomplish with the match. Now, if you're talking PRS NRL, if you're talking bench rest, that's a whole nother freaking podcast. If you're talking Palma, if you're talking some of these that are different, that's a whole different. ELR is the same way. They're all different. So you've got to also understand when you ask the question, make sure you're putting on there, I'm shooting Palma, and this is what I want. I'm shooting PRS, and this is what I want. I'm shooting ELR. This is what I want. It helps us really. I've had some pissed off people in the freaking group because they're like, you shut our post off. And I'm like, yeah, because you didn't ask the right question. And now you're getting a whole bunch of shit, a bunch of garbage you shouldn't be listening to because you posted the question without asking the full question. Like, what were you asking? What are you trying to accomplish with it? Because we want to help you, but no one is helping you, giving you the wrong freaking information in this group. And you're going to learn that in every group. And in my opinion, if the admin doesn't shut off comments like that, it becomes a problem because the misinformation then goes just absolutely freaking everywhere. And you're not getting the information that you truly need. And
it's not just for the person asking the question too. It's the people giving the answers. And I know we've got that one pin post at the top that I made that was talking about if you don't have experience in the sport or you don't know what sport they're asking for, that needs to be the first question. When I come across those posts, if it doesn't have what their intended application is or what their budget is, I don't even try and give them an answer. My first question is, what is your application? What is your budget? is that the only thing you're going to be using it for? And then I'll try and craft an answer around that, because we get way too many people that are just like, well, I want my opinion to be heard. Well, their opinion isn't even relevant to the discussion, because they asked what's the best PRS rifle and they've only ever shot bench rest. So it doesn't matter what your opinion is. It's not necessary. And so I think it's on both. The individuals looking for the information aren't asking the right questions, but the individuals giving the information are just giving it because they want an ego boost.
Yeah, and I mean, everybody in some sort of way, I think, wants to help other people, right? I think as in the people in the group, they're like, "Hey, I want to help you learn. I don't want to see you mess up." But in essence, you're actually messing the person up because you don't know what the hell they're talking about. So that's not. I don't think that's necessarily the people's issue answering the question either, because they're just answering how they feel like they should answer it.
Yeah.
But that's what's different about the long range tactics, is we try to fix that so that doesn't happen. The BC on an 80 is barely different from the 75, but you get more powder behind the 75. So what he's saying is you get more velocity on the 75, and the BC is not really different. So you could get a 75 and it might be a little bit better with wind buck and stuff. I don't know. I'd have to run the data on it, but that's one of those I have to run data on. I can't really speak to that. Yep. Chris said 308 is a great training round. Of course it is. 100%. Yep. I've got one. I love it. It's probably actually my 308 is probably one of my best shooting freaking rifles. Everybody that shot my 308, they're like, holy hell, don't shoot anymore, because you don't ever want to burn that thing out. And I don't shoot anything but factory through it. And it's shooting 5 shots, sub half MOA. I've had a couple guys shoot sub quarter MOA, 5-shot groups out of it. I mean, it shoots. And I don't know what the hell we did to it to make it shoot like that, but it shoots and it trains really well. And it helps me understand that wind and, different things like that. But again, you need to think about this. Do you have the money to build a trainer and buy the ammo and the components and everything to do a trainer? Then great. You could always go 2-2-3-2, and it's probably save you a little bit of money between powder, between all that kind of stuff. The bolts are a little bit cheaper. So that's something that you need to take into account if you're going to do a 308 or a trainer. And we say trainer it is not something, a trainer is something you wouldn't necessarily shoot at a match, but it's going to give you more information as you're shooting it and training on the side for wind, for recoil, for trigger time, different things like that. Because trigger time, in my opinion, is huge with that stuff.
And part of it's also long-term cost. I mean, you're talking about your 308. If you're only shooting factory loads through it, barrel life on a 308 with factory ammo is like 10,000 rounds. I had one when I was in the Marine Corps that was at 12,000 rounds and still shot about 3/4 of a minute. And I was actually worried because it was past the point that it was supposed to go off and get rebarreled. And I kept telling our armorers, I'm like, don't fucking touch it. Like, leave it. It shoots great. I don't want you to touch it. Don't mess with it. And so that's one of those things when you're running like 6 GTs and they've got a 2,000 round barrel life, depending on how hot they're running them. For those guys trying to push 3,000 plus out of them, they might be a little bit less. I mean, you look at how much you have to load to be able to go train a consistent amount with it, but you're going to have to rebarrel it 3 times throughout the year versus a 308 that you don't have to rebarrel for 3 years.
You want me to blow your mind real quick? So when I was at Barnes, I wanted to see truly not how many rounds I could get through a chamber, but how many rounds I could get through a barrel. Now this is 2 totally different things, and I'll do a podcast about this one of these days, because I had thousands of barrels. I did all sorts of stuff when I was a ballistician at Barnes. So I had a 308. It started out as a 28-inch 308. Take a guess at how many rounds went through that barrel before I actually threw it away.
30,000.
Way higher.
Really? 70,000.
It was almost 100,000 rounds through a 308. Because it never builds enough heat to screw up the riflings and the bore. The only thing the 308 ever built heat in was the chamber. So we'd screw up the chamber. So we started with a 26-inch barrel. We went to like a 25 and 3/4 barrel. I mean, we just kept chasing it, fixing it, chasing it, fixing it.
So you just rechamber it every time?
By the time I got done with it, I think I was down to, it was like a 16-inch barrel or something like that. And they were straight barrels. So they were inch 250 straights. But yeah, I mean, it was freaking nuts how many rounds we got through that barrel. But The other thing that I don't think people understand is like a lot of times your barrels never actually wear out. The throat wears out, so you get rid of the barrel. But if you were to pin gauge and check that barrel, the barrel's still probably fine. You could chase a reamer in it, spin it up, headspace it, and you're off to the races again. And with 308, you can do that. So next time you're shooting a 308 and it starts to go out, go talk to your gunsmith, check your dimensions on your barrel with some pin gauges. I bet you can still shoot that freaking barrel. So it's something you can think about while you're doing it. And you don't have to buy new barrels.
And you can also mess with seating depth too. I mean, I ran into a guy, Dr. Pike, used to do a lot of work with David Tubb, and I ran into him at the NRA, or not the NRA, the CMP Long Range Nationals a couple of years ago, and he was helping us work through some issues we were having with our AR-10 308s for 1,000 yard, and he long seats all of his cartridges until he gets to the range. And he measures his throat at the range and then seats everything for that match and then does it again for the next match. And he tracks everything down to like the tiniest amount. And so you get a lot of people too, where they'll think their barrel gets shot out because the group's opened up a little bit. And we're not talking opening up to like 4 minutes. Like there's people saying their barrels are shot out because it shoots 1.25 minutes. Well, it could just be their throat's worn out or more worn out than it was. They really just need to, depending on the projectile they're using, some of them don't like to jump. They need to be right on the lands, and they might just need to seat their projectiles a little bit longer so that they're staying on the lands as the throat wears out.
Yeah, I 100% agree with that. That might be a little too much, going to every match and measuring your shit.
Oh yeah, I mean this was he shoots F class, and F class is a whole.
Yeah, F class and bench rest, they're freaking. I couldn't even go. I'm not that OCD. I couldn't do it.
I'm too lazy for that shit.
I'd probably end up being a drunk trying to chase myself around. You know what I mean? It was just.
Have you met F class shooters? It's pretty much all there are.
Yeah, same with bench rest. I know they get, if it's not like in the same exact hole, like 0.1s, 0.2s, it's a shit cartridge and they're throwing it away. Yeah, that's or a shit barrel and throwing it. That's what's funny about it though. That's totally different. But again, we're talking about PRS NRL rifles right now.
Yep.
I'll bring some people on. We'll talk about ELR because that's something I even want to learn about. The ELR's a whole different, them giant freaking bolts, giant cartridges. That's a whole nother freaking ball game. And I saw that there now is a queen of the 2 mile. The 2 mile was there, and there's always been a king, but now there's a queen, which is awesome. My wife would probably smoke me in it, so that's fine. It is what it is. She beat us all in the freaking first ever ELR 22 match. It was a bullshit. But, all of us, when that was when I worked for Voodoo, hell, all of us had to go home with our tails between our legs. Chris said I got sloppy with recoil management with a 223. What is your input on that, John?
Yeah, I mean, I could see it. I mean, I've got a good break on mine, and it definitely barely recoils. And it's going to be the same with any of your 6 mils. It's why everyone kind of started switching to 6 mils. Was it's so easy to have good recoil management with that cartridge that if you switch to either something without a brake or a 308 that even with a brake, depending on the brake you have on it, 308 still recoil a fair amount. You're going to notice a lot more movement in your position, shot to shot. I wouldn't necessarily say it's sloppy. I'm a huge fan of recoil management. You just had gotten used to what was acceptable for a 223, and that was no longer acceptable for a 308. And part of that could be just the build. I mean, again, if you're switching from a 223 with a brake to a 308 without a brake, you can have great recoil management. That 308 without a brake is still going to move. It's just how it works.
Yeah. And I want you all to kind of think about this. Now, the next time you go shoot, you shoot a round. Can you tell yourself before you run that bolt where that round hit? I had that issue forever, right?
Mm-hmm.
I was running 300 Win Mag. I was running 308s. I was running 6.5 or 260s, and I was running a little bit hotter 260. And I always heard people like, where did it hit? And I'm like, sometimes I couldn't answer the question because I just, number one, I wasn't squarely behind the rifle, and the recoil management, like Chris was talking about, I wasn't coming straight back. It was going to a side. That was something that I really needed to work on managing, is that straight back recoil. Now, Philip and Kalen teach that. A lot of people teach that, how you're positioning with the rifle and the way it recoils straight back. You keep your eye on the target. You don't run the bolt till you see it. And I never really took that into account when I thought about my cartridge. And then I went to the 6XC, the 6GT, and I ran my bolt. I shot. And I'm like, holy shit! I can see exactly where that's hitting. How has this been doing that whole time? And that's something that you've got to take into account is you can tell yourself if you're doing it correctly. If you're making those shots and you cannot see where that bullet is hitting, even at 5, 6, 7, 800 yards, if you can't see where that bullet's hitting, you have a problem, and you need to start going down the checklist of what you're doing. And a lot of that could be cartridge and caliber specific of you not being able to manage the recoil on that, right? What do you teach in that? Don't you teach a lot of that kind of stuff, don't you?
Yeah, I mean, for recoil management, I kind of teach the same stuff that everybody else does. Making sure it all comes down to position, really, is what it comes down to, and just tweaking and perfecting your position. That's one of the reasons why I actually like recording myself. I know you've seen a bunch of my debrief videos. Those are as much for me as they are for my followers on my page. Is it lets me go back and look at my stages, and there's plenty of recordings I don't post that I just kind of use for myself to see what I can improve on my position, because under the timer, I don't think I make mistakes. No one does. Everything was that was a perfect 90 seconds. That couldn't have gone any better. And then I realized I got a 3 out of 9 and go look at my video and I'm like, oh, that was all types of wrong. And so a lot of it's position. There's also some other things like you just mentioned, not running the bolt until the impact has hit the target, right? That's something that I know shit on the military side was never taught until I got to the shooting team. It was run the bolt as fast as possible because we always worked in pairs. So we had a spotter that was worrying about that, so we never worried about it. So our muscle memory was the shot breaks, run the bolt. And shit, half the time we had the bolt back and we're chambering the next round before the first round even got on target. So that habit was something that had to be broken. But because that has been the training for so long, that kind of eased its way into the civilian PRS sides. You have a lot of people run the bolt way too quickly and they don't wait to watch that impact. And then they over magnify, especially if it's a prone stage shooting at one target or maybe two targets for some of the longer distances. And they're running that up to 25, 26 power. Even with proper recoil management, it might move it enough that you're going to lose the target and the trace. And so it may not be necessary to be running on that high of magnification. I typically run at like 16 is the highest I'll run it.
Yeah, 16 to 18 is me. Everybody thinks, hey, I'm going to get a 7 to 35. I'm going to run at 34 and a half. It's not right, especially when it's a closer shot. Like everybody's like, I'm going to zoom right in, and then they can't read that miss. But I mean, that's a whole other podcast. We could talk about optic selection, but I really want to get back to, being able to understand when your caliber selection, when you're thinking about this, thinking about recoil management. Recoil management isn't just how much recoil it's getting, is how much you're managing it, especially on, you get a lot of wobbly barricades in this. You get a lot of freaking crazy ass. I've done it. I put them in my matches where people come swearing at me after the match. They're like, that was the stupidest thing ever. And I've shot at elk, I've shot at deer, some crazy shit, tree branches, fence lines, different things like that. And it was always really hard to watch misses, especially when you're shooting a bigger caliber, like a 28 nozzle or 300 Min mag or something. But that's something totally different. But you've got to think about how you can do that. And then a lot of guys are adding a shit ton of weight to rifles. My GT's 20 something pounds. And the way that it sits on the thing and the way it recoils back and whether you're using a bag and different things like that. I mean, that all comes into factor with how all that's going to work together, right?
Yep, absolutely. And a lot of people use that to kind of mitigate their position. Again, you go to a brand new PRS shooter that's maybe been shooting for 6 months to a year. They've shot a couple of matches and they've built a rifle for PRS. Chances are it's 23 pounds. And some 6mm cartridge. They've spent a ton of money. They learned how to reload for it, and they've taken 0 training classes. And they don't practice on the weekends. They don't have props that they dry fire off of. And they don't do all the cheap and free stuff that means they don't need a 23-pound rifle.
Yeah. And one of the things that's really helped me with understanding that, and I don't have it set up in here, is my indoor dry fire training system. I realized I'm not in the best shape I used to be in. My breathing control is it's screwed up. And my trigger control, everything's gotten super freaking sloppy. And me taking the time to sit behind that, running no ammo, running nothing, just running the bolt and running my trigger finger and getting that figured out. So I'm going to do a little plug for them right now. They do have them available. I think Swanee's Comp Gear has them available. It sits in, I wish I had it. It sits in a little roll up case. You pull it up, put a thing in it, like a show thing, and then I've got adapters that fit over my scopes, and I'll just sit here on chairs. I'll bring in a step ladder in the house. I'll do different things. It's in the AC, it's in the heat, whatever time of year you're at. You put that diopter thing over your optic, so you're still using the same optic, you're still using your chassis, you're getting used to your trigger control, and you're breathing. And that's been a big thing that's helped me, I think, over the last little bit is just spending the time doing little things like that. And it's hard. It's hard, like we just talked about, getting components and things like that. So it's an investment that once you buy it, you don't have to freaking spend any more money doing it. You just run your bolt, get trigger time, get dry fire time in. You can do it while you're watching TV at night. So definitely go check it out. I know Swanee's had some, and so go check out Swanee's Comp Gear. I'll give Swanee some love. Yeah, he does a lot of for this industry. So what else? What else can we talk about in calibers and cartridges?
I mean, we kind of touched on it earlier a little bit. Reloading proficiency. Reloading is like any other aspect of the sport. It requires practice, it requires patience, and it requires a certain level of skill. And that is something that is not to be underestimated. Again, I kind of alluded to it earlier with like 6GT. It requires a little bit more finesse than loading for 223. Or loading for a pistol. If you're a competent reloader, you used to shoot USPSA and you load 9 mil or 40 or 10 mil or whatever all the time, 6GT or 6BR or any of those are a little bit of a different ball game. And so that may not be the best caliber to just jump right into if you've never loaded precision long range cartridges before, because you may end up spending a lot of time trying to run down issues with your load. That'll end up giving you a larger disadvantage than shooting a different cartridge that is either easier to load for or you don't have to. Again, that's a huge advantage to 6.5 and 6 Creedmoor. Who is it? Chris brought up earlier. They got really good factory ammo from Hornet.
Well, and I want everybody to kind of understand there's a flop side to that. So, like with my GT, I didn't know where to start. There isn't really any published information out there about the GT, but I went in the Precision Rifle blog. I went on a couple groups, forums, and I found that there was kind of a certain node within a certain like powder bullet. So I went to 115. I'm like, well, I'm shooting a 112, so I'm going to be close. I kind of put it together and did it. So you've got to, it's kind of like Jonathan said, you've got to understand what the hell you're doing, but there is a lot of great information out there on some of those cartridges. The GT, it took me, I don't know, probably 2 trips to the range to really dial it in and figure it out. And it was not hard. It was probably one of the easier ones I've done. And it's just because I stole everybody else's ideas off of it. I'm shooting 4350 through it. I'm shooting a 112 match burner. I'm shooting the same primer everybody else is. And they put in the forums, I'm hitting a node here and I'm hitting a node here. If you want to know what a node is, Google it, it'll tell you. But so there is some easy ways to figure out some of that stuff. So don't get discouraged. But to Jonathan's point, if you don't know what the hell you're doing, you don't know how to check distance off of lands, you don't know how to, truly dial in a load for a node, he's 100% right. If you can go buy factory ammo and it shoots freaking house fire off factory ammo, I mean, hell, why not do it if you can find the factory ammo? That's a big part.
Yeah, that's the other thing that is throwing a wrench in everyone's gears is components are difficult to find, factory ammo is difficult to find, and it can get expensive. I mean, shit, my local gun shop was selling boxes of 6.5 Creedmoor for like $80 a piece. That makes it more expensive than 6GT.
Yeah, that's BS. That's complete and utter bullshit.
Well, I think they got 10 boxes of 6.5 Creedmoor over a period of 6 months.
Yeah, there's some that are like that. I mean, we just found CCI primers on Brownells the other day, and I made an order, and I got 2,000 of them. But everybody's kind of doing that. They're a little bit scared. They're like, well, we don't know when this is coming back, so I'm going to order a little bit here, I'm going to order a little bit there, and I'm just going to keep ordering it, even though I probably don't need it. I'm going to keep ordering it. So I think that's kind of what everybody's doing. And then choosing bullets. There's definitely some bullets out there that are better than others. There's some bullets that the BC is complete garbage on. I'm not going to say what the company is, but that's something you also need to understand is, working through your loads, getting your data, and then double checking your data at distance and different things like that. That's one of those big things. But when it comes back, go ahead.
I was going to say, you actually bring up a good point. You kind of talked about it earlier too. Understanding the projectile you want to use and the twist rate needed for that projectile. I know Cole knows about this. One of the best online resources is, I think it's the Barnes stability calculator. I think it's on Barnes's website. You can input your twist rate. You built that?
We did, yeah.
Yeah. You input your twist rate, your projectile, the speed that you want it to go, and it will spit out a stability number for that projectile, and it gives you a little chart that tells you where it falls and how high you need it to be for it to be stable or mostly stable. And so if you're looking at doing a new rifle build and you've picked a caliber, you need to pick a projectile before you pick your twist rate. Otherwise, you're just going to order whatever somebody recommends or order whatever your buddy shoots, but then you find this new projectile or this projectile that you've got a ton of already for another rifle, and the twist rate's either too fast or too slow. So when you pick your rifle, before you get it, or before you pick a barrel, pick your projectile.
Yeah, and there's another part to that. Elevation has a huge part on that. So, your DA, depending on how, if you're shooting a 7 twist or even a 9 twist, let's say a 9 twist 223, it will probably stabilize something in Texas better than it'll stabilize something in Utah just because of elevation. So that's another thing. But in the competition world, there's usually a certain set of weights in a certain category. So what would we say? In 6s, you're between a 105 and a 115 in competition. Yeah. So you want to make sure no matter what you get, depending on what bullet you find, it will work within that range. Now, don't worry about necessarily over twisting it, because you got to push it really, really hard according to a twist calculator to make the jacket separate. If a jacket separates in that, there's something wrong with the friggin' bullet. That's all there is to it. Now in 6.5, you're in the 130 to probably 140, 150 class.
Yeah.
Yeah. So you want to make sure that it regulates in between that and 223. I would never go below a 9 twist ever. Just because it will never stabilize anything unless you're shooting really light, bullets. 308, you want to stay in that 10, 9, some 8.
I'd say between 8 and 10.
Eights are really good for subsonic stuff, and really spinning some of those slower bullets. I don't think, like with the 308, I don't think you're ever going to push it fast enough to spin a bullet, but you've got to realize that over twisting something's going to mess with stabilization as well. My 308's an 8 twist. It works great for 140s. I have no problems with it. Bartland, it's Bartland barrel, and it's done phenomenal. So looks like we've got another. Let's see. Should mention how you should pick your reamer and chamber dims at the same time as picking the barrel. Too many people have the wrong FB for bullets and don't understand how the FB freebore can really affect bullet choice, and seating bullets too far in the case will cause problems. Yeah, that's 100% right. Do you want to hit on that?
Actually, I'll let you hit on that one because you're the ballistician. That one's a little bit outside of my realm of expertise.
So what they mean by freebore, there's a lot of chamber reamers, and there's for 6GT, there's probably 3 different variations, whether you buy it from Manson, whether you buy it from PTG, whether you buy it from Climber, whoever you buy the reamer from. There's different free bores, there's different things like that. Now, when we build rifles, a lot of people call us, hey, do you have a free bore? You know, I want more free bore because I want a different bullet and I want to seat it out longer. But you've also got to understand that most of the time you are stuck with a certain overall length because of mag length, right? Only a certain length of bullet will fit in your magazine. So you've got to understand, and that's one thing that you can really call and talk to your gunsmith about is, hey, what reamer do you have? What, do I need to seat it out longer? What is the reamer built for? Is it built for a 115D tack? Because you can buy reamers now that are specifically built for a certain bullet. So if you want to go buy a 115D tack, if you want to go buy a 112 Barnes, these reamers fit it a little bit better and they work better. So that's another thing that you need to ask your gunsmith, and he should know it. If your gunsmith doesn't know it, you might want to talk to a different gunsmith about doing your work, because if they don't understand that, that's a problem. So ask the questions. What bullet is that made for? And they could always reach out, if they have an issue. I know Dave Manson and all those guys are really good at answering questions if they reach out and talk to them, but understand what you're going to shoot through it. The reamer is a good one. Thanks for bringing it up. Appreciate that.
Mm-hmm.
It's just as important as twist rate, because if you put a really long throat in a 6 GT, but you can't load it out within 30 or 40 thousandths of the whatever you're getting, it doesn't make any sense, because you're probably never going to get that cartridge to shoot. Now, I don't think anybody would ever be dumb enough to make a reamer that would have that much free bore in a 6 GT. But in 300 Win Mag and some of the others, there's been somebody that builds a really long one because they don't care about it feeding out of a mag. They single feed, or they do something else like that. So it's completely different. But hey, thanks for bringing that up. We appreciate that. I'm trying to think of what else we can really hit on here before we can go. Cartridge and calibers. So in my opinion, I love the 6s. They're my favorite to compete with now. If you can do it in a 6, the 6XE kind of kicked my ass for a while. It's still kicking my ass. There's some people that have found some really good loads, but a lot of people have gone away from the 6XE. They've gone to the GTs, to the BRs, to some of those. The BRs are super easy to load for. That's why they're really pushing it now, is people are having that easiness. But with some of those mini cartridges, they're having feeding issues. So you've got to do some major finessing to your mags. You've got to do some that's what you've got to understand when you ask a question with, what cartridge should I choose? There's so many freaking variables to do this, but I don't want you listening to have a complex over this either. And that's why I said, go to a match. The first thing you should do before you ever make a purchase is go to a match, whether it be a 1-day match, whether it be a 2-day match. You don't have to RO. I keep telling everybody RO just because matches need ROs. But go to a match and just hang out, bullshit, ask questions, go to sight-in day and sit there and talk. If you see me on the range, come pull me aside. I'd love to talk to you about it and, help you, educate you, because people have messaged me all the time. They're like, hey, what can I do? And I try to respond the best I can, but it is what it is. So those are just things to think about. Now, the Long Range Tactics official group is there for you guys to use. You guys and gals. We want ladies on there asking questions. We want guys on there asking questions. And then we want people that know what the hell they're talking about on there answering questions. If you would like to be an assistant, if you want to be a product knowledge expert on there, let us know. We'd love to have you. Because we want that educational part in the Long Range Tactics group. And if you want to talk to us, just PM us, shoot us a message on Facebook or Instagram and say, hey, what we want to do. We're going to start setting up some one-on-one classes, some small group classes to teach some of this stuff. We probably won't charge for them. We just want to help educate. But again, we appreciate you all for listening to the podcast. For you that have come on live, I know it's the middle of the day. I know somebody commented, hey, it's the middle of the day. Guess what? It's the only time I can freaking do it, because I've got a meeting tonight. I've got so much crap going on. So I appreciate you guys taking the time out of the middle of your day to do it. Again, if you're listening on the podcast, whether it be Apple Podcasts or wherever it is, make sure you go review it. We need the reviews. We appreciate them. We're getting a ton of downloads. I just don't know why people aren't reviewing it. So go review it. If you don't know our discount codes, I'm going to try and start posting those out better. We've got a Cryptech code, we've got phone scope code, we've got Fix It Sticks code, we got all these different things that you can get better deals with. So keep your eye out for those. Any final thoughts, Jonathan?
No, I think we've kind of beat the dead horse, so to say, and gone over everything that's pertinent to somebody that's choosing a new caliber.
Mm-hmm. Then we'll have to do another one about hunting, because hunting's totally different.
Yeah, completely different animal.
Depends on what you're hunting, I guess. But no, we appreciate all of you. Come back. We'll be doing some more of these lives, I hope, if we can freaking find time with hunting season and everything else. But thanks for joining us. Thank you all for watching. Definitely appreciate it. I can't say it enough. Thanks for Falcor Defense, Primary Arms, Long Range Tactics, Phone Scope, Cryptech, everybody that sponsors and supports us. We appreciate it. Till next week. Thanks all.
Don't be afraid to pipe up. Send us your questions or topics and we'll cover them on the show. Thanks for listening.